Hello and welcome to the Walk and Love podcast. I'm TJ.
And I'm Brooke.
And today we're going to talk about gladness and wrap up our series on the voice of the heart. I was nervous. Did it on purpose, didn't you?
I'm not going to miss it.
Thank you for listening. The Walk and Love podcast is a weekly conversation between Brooke and I about emotions, rhythms, marriage, parenting, and faith. It's a place where we laugh and sometimes cry as we try to find language to live a joy-filled life. And today's sponsor of the Walk and Love podcast is us, Walk and Love. Tools and inspiration for a joy-filled life. And some of those tools and some of that inspiration are reminders that you can wear. And our next collection will come out March 9th at 9 p.m. and be available for 1 week only. And so if you need a new shirt, I know you do. I just know.
Yeah, it's time.
That's the time to buy one, March 9th.
Yeah.
A lot of great designs coming back, and we're super stoked. We'll probably start previewing it next week.
Wow.
Wow. All right. Brooke, how was your week?
T, how was your week?
My week was good. My sister, her husband, and their 5 children were in our home.
Yeah. Are you just showing off with how quickly you just went right into your week after saying my week was good?
Yeah.
You knew everything that happened.
For 10 days. During those 10 days, there was June's birthday, Kyle, my brother-in-law's birthday, the Super Bowl, and Valentine's Day. Yep. So it was a week of celebration, and then we were just obviously celebrating them being here, which was super fun. So we played like part tourist, part let's still try to do our normal lives. I think one thing that really helped is like last year when they came, June and Sunny stayed in their room, and then they all like kind of like shoved into 2 other rooms.
Their family shoved.
And then this year we brought June and Sunny up here for like a week-long sleepover on mats on our floor. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that gave June and Sunny, like sometimes at the, I was telling Sam, at the end of someone staying there, they're usually like really ready for that person to go so they can have their space and their toys back.
And yeah.
And today was the first time that they were like, I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to leave. And I think it's because they had their own space.
Quote unquote.
Still in our house, but it was in our room.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was super fun. We did all the Maui stuff.
It's raining again now.
It's raining. We got some rainy season weather, but yeah, the week was good. June turning 8
mind-blowing.
Is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It feels like, I don't know. 8 feels so kiddish.
Yeah, you're like a kid.
Yeah, and so like to just
almost a big kid, not quite, but close.
And just like to be like, we've been parents for 8 years. Like it's like I'll turn 38 this year. That feels old,
right?
Like
it's not, but okay.
It's close to the next 10. You know, it's like close to 40.
Right.
8 is close to 10, and so I think there's some of those feelings and emotions, but like it's just wild to just think like owning your whole life.
Yeah.
A little 8-year-old, you know? She's like kind of in that phase where like she's still so cute and sweet, but then she's also just like goofy and like weird kid where you're like, I don't know how to respond to whatever you're doing right now. So I'm just going to let it happen, wait till it's done, and then move on.
Yeah.
But Brooke threw a really great birthday party for her. Had some friends over, and then the Super Bowl was fun. Although Kyle and their family, specifically Max, hardcore Eagles fans, in the third quarter he started losing it, and he's losing it.
Yeah.
With some tears and some strong emotions, and I was like, he like saw the writing on the wall because it was a close game all the way till the end, but he was like, nope, they're gonna lose. Like he
was premature in his acceptance of their loss.
He was Googling bridges in the early third quarter, but it's a fun Super Bowl game. And other than that, the week has been sort of just like trying to piece together some work while
I think wall.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're talking about a wall.
While hanging out with friends. And so, yeah, my week was really good, and I'm very excited both to finish off The Voice of the Heart. Let us know what you thought of the book thing. I don't think we'll do this very often, but
no,
I do feel like it's led
especially because most books are like 3 times the length of this one.
I just felt like it led to some very deep, rich communication between the two of us, and hopefully it led to the same thing in your own relationships. But tonight or tomorrow morning, I leave for integrated. So next week's podcast will be an integrated brain dump, which I feel like are always sort of fun and
I always love learning about whatever you guys all learn.
So I'm super stoked on that. And yeah, my week was very, very good.
It was full.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't have anything extra to add because we kind of did the same thing all week.
All week. All right. Any other news that we need to get into before we start talking about Voice of the Heart? Here's some news.
Oh.
If you sign up for our email list.
I was like going to invent some news.
You're entered to win a $500 gift card.
Yeah.
Link in the show notes.
If you're already subscribed,
you're already in. But you can go and update your preferences on the types of emails that you want to receive.
Yeah.
Collection comes out March 9th. We're going to have 2 events this year, July 8th and December 15th. Mm-hmm. July 8th will be like a marriage workshop. December 15th will be the Christmas extravaganza.
Are you out of breath from the stairs?
Yes, I am. The other thing I did this week, which I just did this morning, was I competed in my first ever CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, anybody can compete. You just pay $20.
Yeah.
But everybody that did it this morning did the same workout, which is like really cool. And it's interesting to me, like all the CrossFit people is like, it feels like you're part of something big and cool and amazing. And like everyone's working towards the same goal. And I'm like, yes, much like Christians and Jesus. And it's like, I felt that for most of my life.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to me to watch other people feel that and experience that.
Towards something.
Again, like I'm not negating that feeling towards CrossFit because I feel that towards it. But it was just like interesting to be like, yes. And that's such a good feeling to have, especially when it's like, like exercise is like good for you and it like helps you. And so it's definitely a positive movement. And so, yeah, it's just interesting. But did that this morning. Took Sam and Kyle to the airport and their family.
Rode your bike home in the rain.
Rode my bike home in the rain. Now we're recording the podcast. So let's get into it.
Yeah. I
wish we had like a
transition sound.
Yes.
Ooh. Ooh.
Transition. Okay. Up next in the chapter.
It's like I was going for like a little bit ghost, a little bit excited.
I got the ghosty.
Little ghosty.
Little ghosty. Who's that, Lex?
Yes.
Yes, she called it because she was so pale.
No, it was the photos of that baby. Remember? There were photos of a very cute baby, but the baby was so pale.
I don't remember.
In the all-white studio.
Oh, yes.
And it was like, she kept being like, oh, did you see the photos of little ghosty? And then it was accurate.
That's great. Okay, that's great. Transition.
Ooh.
That's great.
Okay, go ahead.
So we're finishing up
Final
this book.
chapter.
Final 2 chapters, Gladness and the conclusion. I find myself, again, a lot of you are probably reading this for the first time through. I would put it on your calendar next January to read it again.
Yeah.
Because last January was the first time I read it.
And then you read it again somewhere in the year.
I don't know if I've read it fully twice, but I definitely have like gone back to it since last January. And then this is the second time I think all the way through in a fresh book, which is interesting to like look and see what I highlighted in the old book and to what I highlighted in the new book.
Yeah.
But it is such a powerful, impactful, like
gospel-centered
experience the second time.
Oh yeah,
Like obviously the first time led to all sorts of conversations between the two of us, led to us wanting to do it on the podcast. We've never done a book on the podcast. It's the first one that we've done. And so like, obviously it made an impact last year when I read it, but reading it the second time through, it's like, again, I'll use integrated as an example. The first time I went to integrated, I was like, okay, everything that all these guys do is amazing. I'm going to do all of it. And you're like, you get home, you stress your wife out. And then 2 weeks later, you're frustrated that you're not doing anything.
You haven't done all the things.
And then you're like, okay, well, and then you go to second integrated and you're like, I'm just going to do one thing this time.
Yeah.
And you come home, you don't stress your wife out, and you actually do that one thing very well. And then and then you start adding and stacking those good habits and those good family rhythms on. And then all of a sudden, this will be the 4th year that I go to Austin.
Yeah.
And I will go and look like that. To me, that's sort of like a surreal feeling, sort of like June turning 8. It's like, okay, I've been doing this for 4 years. Our family was different 4 years ago. One, our kids were younger. We didn't have one of them. We lived in a different place.
Yeah.
But also just the way we lived our life was different.
Yeah.
And so
And what's interesting is that even 4 years ago, I would have honestly, genuinely said I was pretty proud of us. Maybe that's not the right word, but like I wasn't necessarily feeling like everything's awful.
Yeah.
Like I hope everything's
that
fixed.
was 2 years before that.
I've been there. Yes. But like I already felt like we had come through a lot of things and healed in a lot of ways, and we're doing and yet there was like so much more to come, which is
and
cool.
So the second time reading this through, I feel a lot like I do it integrated now, where I'm like, man, this is so much richer because I've implemented some of this, but not all of it. Right. And so now I have the like desire to implement more.
Yeah.
And so, like I would just, again, I've told Brooke this, and I think I've only ever said it about this book, that it's going to be a yearly read for me.
You had sort of said it about Parenting with Heart.
That's true, which is
co-authored by the same person.
But I feel like this is like a level deeper than Parenting with Heart. Like, I feel like this and then Parenting Heart with is like when you take this foundation and then just apply it to
specifically to parenting.
Yeah. Which again is great. Okay, so he finishes off with Gladness. And again, let me go back to the very beginning and find the 8 feelings.
Yeah.
Where are we here? Nope. Skipped it. Missed it. Here we go. Transition. I don't have this page marked.
I don't know.
Okay, here it is.
What is the page number? Not that we're going to need to know it again.
39.
39? Okay.
The age I will be in a year and a few months. Hurt leads to healing. Loneliness moves us to intimacy. Sadness expresses value and honor. Anger hungers for life. Fear awakens us to danger and begins wisdom. Shame maintains humility and mercy. Guilt brings forgiveness. Gladness provides hope of the heart to be true. So we're on the final, and so the question that he gets asked a lot, and he talks about in like the first intro chapter, is like, why is only one positive?
Right.
Because when you look at that list, when you look at the list of, I lost the page again.
39?
Keep
your finger in there.
Hurt, loneliness, sadness, anger, fear, shame, guilt, gladness, you would say.
One of those sounds way better than the rest.
Way better than the rest.
Yeah. Even if you're not going with the positive, negative language.
But then he tells you what they lead to.
Yeah.
And so gladness, he basically says in this last chapter that gladness is a full expression of all the other emotions.
Gladness, then, is a result of our willingness to feel the other 7 feelings.
Hurt speaks to our desire for healing and wholeness. Loneliness speaks to our desire for relationship.
This here's all highlighted.
Sadness. I just do the line now to make my life easier.
Okay.
Sadness speaks to our desire to honor and value what matters to our hearts. Anger speaks to our desire to risk and accept pain in order to achieve. Fear speaks to our desire to be prepared, choose wisely, and succeed. Shame speaks to our desire to have abundant life in the understanding of our limitations and to serve something greater than ourselves. Guilt speaks to our desire to be reconciled and unburdened so we can live in the freedom of forgiveness. Gladness comes as a result of our willingness to experience our whole heart in successes and failures. Gladness speaks to the gratification of having our desires fulfilled and even our willingness to have desire itself. Well, we'll see you guys later.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so I just like, again, I feel so encouraged by the gladness chapter. Like, and he goes into some detail on like, what's happiness and what's
like happiness versus gladness. And I will say that he, at like 2 different points, he does swap the word joy with gladness.
Yeah, I think
so. Joy is in the gladness side, not in the happiness side of the comparison.
Early on, he goes, wherever there is hope, there is gladness. Wherever hope is fulfilled, there is more gladness. And so it's like, and then later in the book, he talks about how like it takes courageous people to hope. Like it is easier to be hopeless. And it's interesting. I watched this video. I'm going to tie this in. Okay. I watched this video on Instagram this week where this guy was basically like talking about sort of like the swirliness of culture. And, he's like, and he basically, and I feel like he summed it up so well, at least gave me the language to when I have these conversations of like, he's like, like you take any sort of disaster, like natural, cultural, anything. Like eggs being more expensive, gas going up, like anything.
Okay, yeah.
And he's like, you can choose to this is his words.
I know where you're going.
To live in the fear paradigm.
Yeah.
And if you want to choose that and spend your energy living there, like let's use the egg thing as an example. The price of eggs is going way up. And if you want to choose to live in that fear paradigm of eggs going up and let it consume you and let it drive you and make all your decisions and just swirl around in that fear paradigm.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It is your choice.
That's your choice.
Yeah.
And he's speaking for himself. And this is where I kind of find myself. I'm going to choose not to.
Right.
And that doesn't mean I'm naive to the situation. That doesn't
Right.
mean that I don't have information about the situation. That just means that I'm going to choose not to. I'm going to actively choose hope.
Yes.
Instead of fear.
Yes. Because you're spending energy either way.
Because I'm going to spend energy anyway. And I'm going to believe, I don't know if this guy was a believer, but for me, I'm going to believe that where there is hope, the Lord will provide. And so like maybe eggs will be more expensive. Yes. And again, this is just a current super like trendy topic.
Yeah.
But I believe that God's grace, his love, his goodness, his power is greater than the price of eggs. And so I'm going to choose hope over toxic fear and the fear paradigm. So
yeah,
I just felt like wherever there is hope, there is gladness. And it takes courageous people to hope.
Yes.
And
because in order to feel hope fully, to feel gladness, to feel joy, all three of those things, I'm going to wrap them into one. In order to feel that fully, you have to be willing, whether it's subconscious or not, whether you realize it or not, you have to be willing to risk almost like the crash down when the hope is not fulfilled. What are you going to read?
Gladness
crazy
is
eyes.
about desiring deeply and having a willingness to walk through pain in the pursuit of the desire. The outcome of the desire doesn't matter as much as living it in the heart openly and truthfully. And so, yeah, like I just feel like what I felt as I read this was like, it was just an encouragement to me. And I think what culture does a lot right now is like, if you have hope, you're just naive.
Oh,
you just you don't know what's going on. The article that I read or the podcast that I listened to or the video that I saw about eggs. And because of that, you're just naive. Your hope is stupid. Don't have it. Let me show you why.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's what hope is. Hope is not based on maybe some...
I mean, isn't the biblical hope of it's things not seen, right?
I mean, that's faith, yeah. And
or
so
faith,
it's like, as we walk in faith and we pursue relationship with God, there will be times where people will just be like, oh, you're just naive. You're just naive. And it's like, well, when has God ever forsaken us? You know, as we've walked and pursued him more and more and more. It might not always look like we want it to look like.
Yeah.
But I just felt such an encouragement of like, especially after seeing that video and then reading this chapter, like, yeah, I'm choosing hope because where there is hope, there is gladness.
That video put language to what you and I have already been doing.
Because
sometimes it was, I don't know if I could have explained it very well.
And so like, again, I'm not naive to the news. I'm not naive to things going on in culture, but I'm just not going to let it dominate and dictate
and
my
so
heart.
To me, that's like, that is choosing joy.
Yeah.
That is choosing gladness. So I have highlighted on one of the many pages. Gladness is not about outcomes. Oh, it says the beginning of the sentence, as frightening as it may seem. I probably should have highlighted that part too. As frightening as it may seem, gladness is not about outcomes. It's about living fully. And somewhere else you were talking about how it's like, and we let ourselves even have the desire. I don't know where that just came from, but like, I feel like there were many years, sometimes out of a healthy self-protection at times, but then it's like that season ends and it goes unchecked and I never crawled out of it. Like, I wouldn't say that I was ever, I'm truly thinking about this as I'm talking because I want to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would ever say that I've been truly hopeless in my life. There are areas of my life that I have, I've just accepted, or I don't know what else to call it. Like, I'm just okay with.
Settled.
Thank you. Yeah. I've just settled for being like, for just having no desire in that area because that feels easier than risking it all. Yeah. Cause that's what it feels like sometimes, to have the hope, to have the gladness. And so I was not expecting to get emotional. Title of my autobiography. Autobiography. Auto's when you write it yourself?
Yeah. Bibliography.
Biblioteca. Title
Donde está
Donde
el
está?
biblioteca?
Biblioteca. So like, yeah, I mean, that is frightening for me
Yeah.
to like think, to do that kind of stuff. And again, I wouldn't say that it's ever been like across the board in my life. Zero desire, all hope smashed, like nothing, but there's usually pockets of it. And if I don't stay on top of it, like kind of actively in conversation with you, in conversation with people close to me, in my like prayer life or my journal or what the books I'm reading, like that's hard for me. And honestly, it might be hard for a lot of people. Like I think maybe everybody's like, oh yeah, I've been there. I do
it's
think
definitely harder for you.
certain
1000%.
personalities,
Yeah.
or certain upbringings or certain whatevers, like it can be harder for. And so like to hear and be reminded that gladness / joy is not about the outcome.
Yeah.
Because he's in the gladness versus happiness section when he's talking about this. So happiness is about outcomes, is the part I didn't read. But gladness and joy is not about outcomes. It's about living fully. And that's so encouraging to me, because if somebody said, do you want gladness and joy? I'd say, yes, please. Lots of it. But it's like, I need to hold out both hands. It's like, in order to accept the gladness and joy or run after it or be given the gift or however it's received, I also have to hold the other 7. I have to hold both.
Yeah.
And I can't just hold the one, because then it's either, then it does become about the outcomes or it's counterfeit,
or the feeling or just like
or it doesn't suffice for what it's truly supposed to do.
Yeah, I think that like a tension in our marriage early on, and obviously tensions in your marriage don't just go away. They're kind of always there based on your personality, was like you wanted to squash the hope and the gladness of our lives in the name of like, I just want it to be level.
I would say, this makes me sound even worse, but I would say just of your life.
Of my life, yeah. 100%.
Which of course was ours, but
there was definitely like a tension of just like,
hot, full of joy and gladness naturally.
This is hard for me, but then my shortcoming, and again, this is when marriage becomes such a valuable, amazing gift from the Lord, that like the strengths of you kind of offset the shortcomings of me and vice versa. And so the hard part of marriage is learning how to communicate that over the years, so that then you see it and you understand it, and it becomes less of this and it becomes more of this. Like if you're listening,
why I think some people
like,
call it truly like a dance.
Yeah, it becomes less of like your fists colliding and more of like your hands holding.
Yeah.
And so for me, the struggle was always like I had mistaken true gladness and joy for happiness. And so like it was easy to make me happy, you know.
You have a
I have a long list of things that make me happy, and I put those things above everything else.
Yeah.
And so like if you ask me at the end of the day, and you know, deep in my heart of hearts, was I really truly joyful in those early years of marriage or the adolescent years of my life, I would have lied and said yes, not really understanding the difference.
Yeah.
Because I refused to feel the other 7 feelings. And so for years and years, I squashed them, or like, and I would feel them here and there. I wasn't like just a numb
you
robot.
More didn't acknowledge them versus squash
Didn't acknowledge them or just like covered them up with more happiness, quote unquote. Yeah. And so to me, it's just been like the last few years have been a dance of me understanding the full depth of feeling and emotion, being able to talk about it. And we'll get into that in the conclusion. I think he has such a strong word for us. And then you being able to be like, I cannot squash hope and gladness just so I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Like I need to lean into that.
Yeah.
Because if I'm able to feel this down here, I need to allow myself to feel this up here, knowing that this isn't tied to outcome.
Yeah. I feel I've gotten way better, but again, my personality, whatever you want to call it. I'm speaking for myself. I tend to feel very...
And like 80% of our audience.
It's for you, Rachel. Actually, I don't know. Hopefully there's a Rachel listening. And if it is, this really is for you. I feel, speaking for myself, like, and talking about what you were just talking about, I tend to feel very responsible for people's emotions.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I know that's very true. And I have gotten better at like acknowledging I feel that and then trying to let it go instead of like holding it and being like, how do I fix this? But that was part of the squashing. Like you said, I'm going to squash this so that I feel comfortable. And that's part of it. But I was also squashing because I didn't want you to be devastated. Right. I didn't want you to experience a crash and then I feel responsible for it. Yeah. So he has this whole section about facing life on life's terms, which was like
Brooke's nightmare.
Yes, Brooke's nightmare. It's actually written there. This is for you, Brooke.
What's interesting though is like
experience
that's in the gladness chapter.
Yes.
You know, it's not in the fear chapter, not in shame, not in hurt, not in anger. It's in gladness.
The fear would probably make the most sense to insert it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like, you know, life's going to do all these things. So you just got to be ready and fear's okay and blah, blah. No, it's in the gladness. So gladness can occur only as we face life on life's terms. And I'm just like, but that sounds so scary.
And it is.
Living life on life's terms also requires us to recognize that we have very little control over it. When the walls around our hearts are broken down, we are set free to experience and choose full living.
And it really is like, it really becomes like you have to experience the full depth of what your heart was created to experience, or else your life will be sort of like short-sighted and jaded, or short-sighted and like kind of bitter. And like the example that he uses on the next page, which made me emotional, is like, he says, when a father gives his daughter away in marriage, it is a painful experience. Mm-hmm. He has sadness about knowing their relationship has changed again. She has grown up and is leaving. He fears whether she will be okay as he lets go again. His heart hurts in knowing that he can't retrace and correct mistakes beyond saying, I'm sorry. Joy comes through his tears and knowing that her heart's desires are being realized, and he gets to be present to see it all take place. Because his heart is completely involved, his pain helps him appreciate the fullness of his life and increases his joy, and almost certainly increases his daughter's joy too.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a dad of 3 girls, I'll do this 3 times, which literally sounds heartbreaking because it is.
Yeah.
But it is also heart living.
It's both and.
It's both and. And so I think one thing that we don't do in life, and I think I've seen this through my parents' generation a little bit more, is like, I don't feel like our parents emotionally prepared for their kids leaving the nest.
Their generation.
Right. As a whole.
As a whole.
You know, I'm sure individuals did for sure, but
probably if it was modeled for them well by their parents.
Exactly. And so you know, the statistics show that a lot of people get divorced when they become empty nesters because they were not prepared. Their heart was not prepared for that transition.
Yeah.
And so they spent their whole life trying to be like, don't grow up, don't like stay at home, don't get married.
Forever.
Yeah. Like, and they said all these things in sort of a ongoing defense mechanism to protect themselves, which it actually just ends up harming themselves because their kids do leave and they go out and they get married and they're not prepared.
Right.
And so I feel like what acknowledging stuff like this does early, like June just turned 8, Sunny's 5, Daisy's 1.5, like they're not getting married for a while, but I already need to prepare my heart for this moment because if I don't, it's going to surprise me and it's probably going to make me act out foolishly if I'm not prepared.
Yeah. And I do think that like using the empty nest thing, like there's only so much preparing you can do.
Yeah,
it's sort of
100%.
like when you have a baby for the first time. Yeah. It's like but you still don't really know what's coming, but that doesn't mean you don't prepare.
Yeah.
You still buy a crib and you still do things knowing that the baby is coming. And I think not actually you don't need to pre-walk through the whole experience in order to be prepared. And so,
but you do need to like you know, I wish we were more emotionally prepared when we had June. Yeah. Like it would have
we had spent more years walking towards emotional health and communication, would we have been better off for it when June was born? Absolutely.
100%. And so that's what I'm saying is like, as we know these things are going to happen in our lives, especially as parents, I know my girls are going to lead, like eventually, like, you know, I think it's in Meg Meeker's book, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, is like, eventually June, when her body changes, she'll feel awkward hugging me.
Yes.
That will happen.
Yeah. They say be ready for the day when you only get a side hug.
And I need to prepare my heart for that so I don't take it out on her.
Yes.
Because our relationship will change. The dynamic will change.
Yes.
And so like I need to understand that. And so what I'm encouraging people to do is like face those things now. Like, and you know, like, and I've talked about it in previous podcasts, like I'm facing the reality that I won't have a son. Like, unless something amazing happens.
Right.
You know, but I need to face, if that is the reality of my whole life.
Yeah.
I need to understand, I need to mourn that. I need to grieve that.
You do, yeah.
I need to have sadness over that because that will allow me to be a better dad and live fully. And so I just feel like when we like TJ of 3 years ago would have scanned over that and been like, oh yeah, that's a long way away. Like, don't worry, like, blah, blah, blah. and today when I read it again, right before we started, I was just like, yes, that is a reality of my life 3 times over. And it will feel different with each kid. Scenario will be different. The timing will be different, all that kind of stuff. And so,
yeah.
But right after that sentence, or right after that example, Chip says, no one reaches the highest peaks of life unless she is willing to fall to the greatest depths. No one can experience deep, heartfelt joy unless he is able and willing to grieve to the core, even having hopes disappointed by not being fulfilled. Gladness, therefore, is only for the courageous, because it requires risking emotional and spiritual pain in the midst of living lives as we are made to live them fully in relationship. And so I just, again, like we need to prepare our hearts for those things and to prepare our hearts. And the conclusion of this book is so good. If you've skipped the whole book, and just read the conclusion because it's so good. Because it just like gives us the steps of like, how do we do that? Because I think, again, like it was 4 years ago this February that Dr. Josh taught it integrated and he gave me the language, the chair behind.
Yeah.
And for the first year, that was one thing that we actually took away. We took away Sabbath and that, and we started implementing them. And for a year I had, and the 15 minutes at the end of the day, those were the 2 things that he taught us on that first integrated. And it was hard for me. It was just like, how do I express my emotions?
What is really in the chair behind?
How do I talk about this with Brooke?
Yeah. And
Why
it's interesting
is this
as
hard?
we first started to specifically with the chair behind, I feel like for a long time, we were able to get like maybe 1 chair behind and we'd be like, nailed it.
Yeah,
like
we're
such
awesome.
confidence in like, hey, I genuinely though, like we weren't foolish.
No.
We were really trying. And then I feel like it was like maybe 6 months to a year in, immediately when one of us would ask like, okay, well, like what's the chair behind there? We'd be like, oh, there's bleachers behind me.
Yeah.
Like it took time and practice to realize, oh wow, it's a lot deeper than I thought it was.
And I say that because like it's worth the work, because like for Brooke and I, our relationship is more intimate, it's deeper, it's richer, it's fuller. And like that, to experience that gladness in our relationship took courage and it took hope, because we had to experience all the other feelings along with that. And so it's not like you can just pick, oh, I'm just going to tear down the walls around the gladness section of my heart and leave everything else up. It won't work.
Right.
You'll eventually just be chasing happiness. And so I just feel like as we've done this study and as we've talked about it, and as Brooke and I have a conversation, and again, like this is just the podcast conversation. We talk about this stuff all week. What I feel is like this reinvigoration to like stay the course.
Yeah.
Because again, with integrated coming up, like that's such like a staple in my year now.
Yeah.
That like, man, 4 years ago, what a different person I was, and as the Spirit of the Lord has sanctified me and convicted me and shown me my guilt and made me understand my shame and, and face my fear and sit in my anger,
and
like
loneliness. Yeah.
It's really helped me become a better husband and father, better follower of Christ, hopefully better in all ways. And so it's worth it. Like that's just what I find myself feeling at the end of this book.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I mean, he asked
it is worth it
at the end of this chapter in the questions for personal reflection. There's 8 questions. The last one, number 8, is the joy of love, the celebration of being fully alive in relationship, worth the pain?
And it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. In the wrapping up the gladness, I felt sort of, I was reminded of the walls around our heart, our little heart houses we've been talking about,
Yeah.
and how we've been talking about like, hey, maybe crack a window.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe break down this side. Like step one, recognize that there is a structure around your heart.
1000%.
Name it, picture it, draw it,
Yeah.
talk about it, whatever. And then 2, figure out like where you very easily open those doors, letting
Yeah.
feelings in and out. Like it's probably some more than others. But then all the way when you get to the gladness, the final sentences are through the breaking of the walls around your heart, which is painful. You find the gift of fulfillment. And so I feel like it's on this journey to rip down the thing entirely.
Mm-hmm.
The house,
Yeah.
the little heart house. There you go.
Yeah.
But if you start there and you're like, I'm all in on all of this, and you crash it all down, I think that's really scary, super vulnerable. You might panic and build it back up very quickly. I do feel like it takes some time.
Yeah.
But we should be working towards, we will be better off if we're working towards fully deconstructing that
Yeah.
little house that holds our heart to keep it completely.
To live a fully experienced full life.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says and he finishes off, I say, when you give your heart to real relationship, you discover the joys of true closeness, acceptance, dependency, trust, risk giving, and love. You live. And then he goes on to the conclusion, and he had a friend ask him, because so his friend read this book, was all pumped up. You know, I'm sure you are.
Right.
Like, you know, like I was the first time I read it.
Yeah. Like now what?
And the friend was like, basically, as he said, so I'm a bird in a nest and I don't have wings. What's the solution? Essentially saying like,
What does it look like?
What does it look like? And
to live like this.
To live like this.
Yeah.
And Chip says this, the solution is to live fully, but the beginning of the solution he was looking for is to recognize and feel his feelings, tell the truth about his heart to those who are trustworthy, and give the truth of his heart to God. Then allow God to do what he does. Simply put, if we do these 3 things, and again, this is where you start. If you're like me 4 years ago, sitting on our leather couch in Pennsylvania in the winter.
I still think we had our blue couch.
Oh, still our blue couch. Yeah, 100%. Being like, I guess my strongest positive feeling was joy. I like June. And
Potato chips are good.
My negative feeling was this conversation. If you're like that, which I'm sure a lot of you are,
can be, yeah.
You know, because we kind of all are there at some point. For you know, none of us are born emotionally healthy, or you know, it's something that is developed.
Yeah.
Here's where you start. We do these 3 things, feel our feelings. And I feel like that is going to be harder for some people than it is for others. I know it is harder for Brooke. Like to literally just...
I've always recognized that they're all there. I just don't fully feel, I don't feel them. I feel like you've been the opposite. You feel no problem, the ones you've chosen to recognize.
Yes. And so to just feel your feelings, name, and again, this is what this book does. It gives you language to name them. Name the anger, name the sadness, name the hurt, name the loneliness, name the fear. And so some of us will just have to start there. And that's like a really great place to start.
Yeah.
And again, you don't have to be a maniac about it and like be like, I'm feeling my feelings. Like, you know, because that's what children do.
Yes.
But you can do the adult version of that. And then the next step is tell the truth. And so again, that's super hard. And that's where like, you know, I think maybe last week or the week before, what does Brooke want? We talked about that. Like, like that's been a good, just like little snappy, helpful thing for us.
Yeah.
That just like, what does Brooke want? Like, tell the truth. Don't lie to me.
Yeah.
Don't lie to yourself. And then
and for me, over such silly things.
Yeah. Like, where do you want to eat? What do you want to do for dinner? What movie do you want to watch?
Whatever.
Like, tell the truth.
Yeah.
And tell the truth about your feelings. And so at the end of the day, if you're with your spouse or you're doing your 15 minutes and you're saying, what's your most positive emotion? And like, let's say your spouse hurt you.
Yeah.
Tell the truth.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully that's
in kindness and grace.
Yeah, hopefully
but
that space is a nice,
Yeah.
easy place to do that. But like, do it. Don't squash that, or, you know, let it flow under the bridge and fill up at the dam. And then give it to God, which is again, just like surrendering to him and his purpose and his will. And just like, I think there's an element of like surrendering to God is like just choosing not to live in the fear paradigm and to choose to live with faith and hope.
Yeah.
And full life will follow.
Feel our feelings. Tell the truth. Give it. I already turned.
Give it to God.
Give it to God.
And I love this line. Feeling our feelings is about beginning to take responsibility for the content of our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like, it's like you say that 10 years when this book was written, 2001, the content of our hearts. No one's thinking about like Instagram content or social media content or YouTube content. And so that word has I feel like is much more commonplace now. Like, oh, I need to do this for content. And so right. If your heart was fully on display on an Instagram account or a YouTube page, what is that content look like?
Yeah.
And, feeling our feelings is about beginning to take personal responsibility for the content of our heart. So if you blasted that out
on a projector
screen and you saw the Instagram of your heart, there would be some stuff you disliked there. There would be some stuff that made you cringe. There would be some stuff that you don't want anyone else to see. There would be a lot there.
Yeah.
And so feeling our feelings is taking responsibility over that stuff and then giving it to God and asking him. So like, if you struggle with something, it's giving it to him and saying, this content over here of my heart, I need help.
Yeah.
I need grace. I need forgiveness. And I need you to help me walk through it. And I don't want it to be the content of my heart.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we don't want content on our Instagram, we don't like it. We
unsubscribe or we block it or whatever.
Like, I feel like that's so helpful nowadays. When he wrote this in 2001, no one was thinking about that.
Yeah.
And so there's just this element of like, man, if I picture that, poof,
yeah,
and I'm scrolling through that and it's just the content of my heart, there's definitely stuff I want to unsubscribe from.
Unsubscribe.
And so that's just a powerful image to like think about.
Yeah. And then, because then you're like, okay, it's there. It's projected. What do I do about it? Well, what you do about it is you start to feel your feelings because that is the first step of taking responsibility of what is on that projector screen of your heart. So back to the heart house. I love, speaking of eggs, do you have all that highlighted?
I do.
Yeah. If you have walls around your heart, you will be limited in what you can genuinely offer. He's talking about giving from your heart in relationship with other people. And I feel like it's whenever somebody says like in relationship with others, weirdly, I often think almost like one layer or ring out. I'm picturing people who are at a little bit more of a distance than me, than like in relationship with others, husband, children, family. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like picturing a neighbor I don't really know, which says something that I have this like distance in it all connecting. Okay, so if you have walls around your heart, you will be limited in what you can genuinely offer. If you are not capable of giving others the truth of your heart, then you will give them lies, even if these lies are well intentioned. You cannot give what you do not have. If I come over to your house to borrow eggs to finish brownies,
which are very expensive.
Yes, and you don't have expensive eggs, I'm not going to get them. If I come over to your house to borrow your lawnmower to cut my grass, but you don't have one, I'm not going to get one. If you don't have something, no matter how badly either you or I want you to have it, you can't give it. Likewise, if I come over to your house and need love and you don't have it, you cannot give it to me. The only way you can serve others is by having what God made you to have. Whew. And then you jump down and he says, God comes to the door of your heart and knocks. And when I think about like tearing it all down, and maybe right before I have the guts to do that, I think about Jesus standing outside my door, maybe not hesitating in a bad way, but raising his hand to knock. Like, if that happened literally, if he literally knocked on my actual door, one, I'd probably be terrified. Two, I would run to the door. I would want to open that door so quickly.
Yeah.
And like, he's always knocking and he's always there. And so I think what I feel is like, why isn't my door always open?
Especially to him.
Always open. Yeah. Yes, to him, but then to like all the gift and the freedom and the gift of all these feelings and the gift of living fully. Like, so whether what's coming through that open door is Jesus or a full life, both, like, yeah, I just found myself asking, like,
wow, why isn't my door always open?
Yeah.
Not here. I don't want the bugs to come in.
And then it's like, why is there even a door?
Right.
And that's
that's the thing. Like, yes, he's going to knock on the door of our little house of our heart. But then, like, once we let him in, I hope that together we start to take it apart.
1,000%. And that is what sanctification looks like. And that's what, intimacy with the Father looks like, is like we are tearing down the walls and the structures we've built around our hearts to live fully with him, hand in hand, open-hearted to the life that he's given us. But a lot of us don't do that. And it's, I've shared this before. It's why like grumpy old Christians don't make sense to me. Like your house heart shouldn't be bigger at the end of your life. It should be smaller, or non-existent. And you should, I think Bob Goff is always my go-to example, is like that guy lives.
Well, so, I mean, we don't know him. So I think.
The version I've read through of him in the books and how I see him on the internet, and, I know people who know him.
Yeah.
They all say the same thing, that he's like the real deal. And it's like, that's the life I want as I age. I don't want my structure to get reinforced and rebar and concrete and additions put on. I want it to get more and more terribly built. I want it to be gone.
Yeah.
So when I'm 80 and June has kids and Sunny has kids and Daisy has kids and they have husbands and they've lived hard, full lives, I can experience it all, and I can be there and be present for it all. And I can walk through the valleys with them and soar the highest heights with them of their lives. And if I have a structure around my heart, I won't be able to do that well.
It's too heavy to carry.
And then now in this present moment, I want to give them the example of that, because if our children are becoming who we are, which is what Josh always says, then we need to show them what it looks like to live with those structures not around our hearts, fully living, fully alive.
Yeah.
Because they won't be able to do it unless we do it.
Yeah.
And they won't be brave and courageous enough to ask us how to do it if they don't think we're doing it.
Right. They won't even know they need to ask. It's not modeled. Yeah.
So, Chip, this is a great book.
Dear Chip, thanks. Love Brooke.
And TJ. Yeah, okay.
I'm kidding. Have anything else to say about it?
I don't think so. I think it's just so good and so rich and so deep. And I just would encourage those of you who like my sister, she's like, I bought the book and I haven't listened to the podcast because I wanted to read it.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could listen to every episode of the podcast on this book and then still go read it. And it we're talking about it in like an hour.
Right.
And we're like, we're skipping sections. We're jumping back and forth. We're sort of like kind of too excited to even, we got that missionary leading, speaking on stage vibe sometimes. But yeah, I would just say that I think it's worth the read, and I think it's worth reading a few times. Because again, I think it's going to give you a lot of helpful language to make your relationships deeper and richer. And so we're going to end this series today.
Yeah.
By Brooke reading the last section,
the
last page of the conclusion. So take it away.
Take it away. Transition. He ends with a prayer. So if you're not driving, maybe close your eyes or just settle into it. If you're driving, please keep your eyes open. So like he says, I pray that you will feel your feelings, tell the truth, and give it to God. You will let your tears flow and your anger create, but do no harm. Your loneliness will help you reach for those you need and help you be available to those who need you. Your loneliness will lead you to reach for intimacy with God. Your sadness will value life and your hurt bring healing, not death, though there will be scars. Your fear will be the beginning of wisdom. Through forgiveness and change, your guilt will lead you back to humility and freedom. You will pursue these real heart truths that your joy will be complete. And I pray that you will long for more life and deeper truths.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for making us a part of your week. Okay, I love you. Bye.